Okay, so today we are crunching numbers. We're going to present you with data to prove what prospective students want online. I am Tom Grieveson. I'm the founder and CEO of Revolution Viewing, and I'm joined by, or I'm really joining, Jonny, who'll take us through today's presentation. Jonny?
Yeah, hi guys, I'm Jonny Harper. I'll be Technical Director, and I'm also the kind of architect of Vepple. Thanks
a lot, Jonny. Housekeeping. So please do submit any questions you have in the Q&A tab. I'm hoping you can all find that. We do love questions. You can't ask too many, just ask them. We'll try and answer them as we go, but for those that we don't manage to answer as we go, then we will park those to the end, and we've got a Q&A session specifically for Q&A at the very end. Just note that you'll receive an email after this webinar offering you a link to the recording of this session, just in case you miss anything or in case you want to share it with any of your colleagues. And I should just point out this is part of a series, so if you'd like to look back at some of the previous webinars that we've held, then you'll find the other ones at vepple.co.uk/resources. If you go to the Vepple homepage, you'll see it there. So at Revolution View, our mission is empowering people to make life-changing decisions, and for higher education, we want to empower prospective students to find their perfect university. We cannot do that alone as Revolution Viewing. We need to partner with the fantastic institutions in the UK, and we do that. And we specifically want to help you to showcase your fantastic organisations or your fantastic campuses and facilities to those prospective students. We want to be able to widen the net and make sure that prospective students can see what fantastic facilities you have. And we use our Vepple platform as one of the many products to help us do that with you as partners. We can move on. Thank you. So in terms of Revolution Viewing and our experience in the sector, we are visual content and a technology business. We're founded in 2004 and we're based in Leeds. We've actually worked with over 110 universities, and we've delivered more than 50 bespoke virtual tours. And that was prior to delivering or to building our platform called Vepple, which we'll definitely talk a lot more about as this webinar progresses. We've actually got 27 universities that sit on our advisory boards. These universities guided the development of our platform Vepple, and they guide us when it comes to the development of many of our products. We've actually undertaken 8 research studies over the past 6 years. This ensures that we have our finger on the pulse and we understand what it is that students want from their future universities. In June 2021, our first clients went live with their Vepple experiences, and all of our research-backed content, sorry, that's our all-new research-backed content hub. Oh, that's a bit of a mouthful for me. We've now got 10 universities that are live with Vepple, and they're enjoying our experiences. And throughout this presentation, we're going to dip into some of the data that we've managed to glean from these live platforms, and Jonny will go into a lot more detail about that. So without further ado, I'll hand you over to Jonny. Thank you.
Cheers, Tom. So today's talk's obviously about data, and before we get kind of stuck into the specifics, I just wanted to cover off the kind of context as to what's actually gone into the data that I'm going to present to you. So as Tom mentioned, we've been working with universities up and down the land for about 15 years now. And 5 of those that we're working with very kindly have given us access to their Google Analytics account for their main university website. So we've obviously anonymized that data, but then we've aggregated it together to form an average to say, sort of, you know, on average for a university website, these are the kind of stats that you're likely to see. So bounce rates around 30%, average session duration about 3 minutes, 18 seconds, and just over 3 pages happen within a session on average. We then compared that with the bespoke virtual tours, virtual experiences that we've been building for the last 15 or so years. And some of those have now moved across to Vepple already, so it's just the ones that are still live that we can compare against. But you can see from the stats, similar kind of bounce rate, an elevated average session duration at over 4 minutes, but the pages per session are way up at 9. And we'll touch on some of these specifics in due course and what that kind of maybe means and why that might be the case, and ultimately why it should matter. But lastly, as Tom mentioned, we went live with Vepple last year, and our first clients went live with their experiences in June. So since then, we've been collecting data. We've had tens of thousands of people using the platform now, and we're starting to see trends in what they're doing and what they're looking at, which is kind of what I wanted to touch on today. So just in terms of how that's working, I'll later on I'll kind of show you it very briefly. But in terms of how it's working, you can see the bounce rate is halved at 15%. Average session duration is 9 minutes, and this is over a 30-day period just for the last month. And on average, we're seeing 10.5 pages happening within a session. So I'll come back to those stats a little bit later on, and kind of we'll go into them a little bit more as time goes through. But I just wanted to kind of highlight the kind of context as to what data has actually gone into the slides that you're going to see. So there's 4 things that really have kind of come out of the virtual tours that we've built, and then moving on to Vepple, that they kind of make our experiences slightly different. But I think there's things that you can take from what we've done and apply them to your university websites, even without us. And they fall into 4 camps. So personalization, content, interactivity, and then user experience. So these are all kind of, fairly standard things that that kind of kicked around, but I wanted to today focus on them and just really flesh them out in a little bit more detail to say how what we're seeing from the stats on our platform, how we think that could be applied elsewhere. So we're going to kick off with personalization, and to begin with, I wanted to just talk about audience and the importance of audience. So as Tom mentioned, our mission as a company is to empower people to make life-changing decisions. And a few years ago, my wife and I decided to make the life-changing decision to start a family. And going through all the kind of stuff that you buy for babies, there's obviously, there's clearly very different types of parents that you're trying to, that people are trying to sell to. And one of the examples that I wanted to just share with you today was nappies. So, these are the nappies that our little ones use. They are from Aldi, and as you can see from the packaging, there's various different labels and things on there to try and kind of target each of the different people who may be interested in buying these nappies. Now, as Tom said, we're from Leeds. I'm a Yorkshireman, so naturally for me, the most important thing was cost. But to some other people, I'm told very regularly that I should pay more attention to prevent sagging. And, to some parents, I think those are the kinds of things that matter. Likewise, some of the more scientific things, maybe related to allergies, and likewise, award winners and things like that. People look for different things. So good looks very different depending on who you ask. And testament to the fact that is, if you ask my little boy what was important about nappies, in fact, it was whether or not it makes a good hat. So applying that up to kind of university experiences, I wanted to just kind of highlight really the challenge that you guys have got in terms of your audiences and the fact that you're trying to talk to so many different people. So university websites, yes, they're used for prospective students, but they're also used for existing students, staff, alumni, business partners, research fellows, and I'm sure many more audiences as well. And that can make it quite tricky for the people who, for prospective students, for example, who have a very sort of specific interest in a subset of information. And that, when you see the amount of information, often thousands of pages that university websites have on them, there's so much noise because there's not necessarily relevance for everything to everyone. Obviously, only some stuff is relevant to some people. So that's where, from what we've seen and the data that we've seen, personalization has really helped. So what do we mean by personalization? We basically mean tailoring the experience to showcase everything that is relevant to one person in a kind of seamless joined up journey. And we'll touch on the journey later on. But as an example, it might be that you filter an experience by what subject you're interested in, or what level of study you're in even, is it undergraduate, is it postgraduate? Are you interested in chemistry or English? Are you based in the UK or are you based abroad? Are you an inquirer? Are you an applicant? Are you an offer holder? Have you even started with us? All of these things can kind of shape what information that prospective student needs. Likewise, it might not even be just for students. Are you a student? Are you a teacher? Are you a parent? Again, they're all going to have slightly different informational needs. So I would really encourage you, and we'll touch on what we've seen from the stats of this, to think about how you can, with your website, cater for these different audiences and sort of streamline things to reduce the noise so that they are seeing stuff that is exclusively relevant to them. So with Vepple, you can either take a kind of generic experience where you just see the best bits, or you can personalize the experience to kind of make sure that everything that you see is hyper relevant to you. And I'll show you this later. But just in terms of the performance of that and what we've seen so far, there's a really strong correlation between personalization and then better engagement and conversion. So for the people who choose to personalize their experience, so that's saying, I'm interested in undergraduate art and design and I'm from the UK, they are 2.5 times more likely to click on one of the main calls to action. So they might be, book an open day, visit us, download a prospectus, apply now even. And those kind of key hard-hitting things that we know many unis are kind of quite keen to deliver on. Having this idea of personalizing content is working, and we're really seeing that drive conversions. On average, they spend more than twice as long on site than people who receive a generic experience, and likewise, they're more than twice as likely to consent to email marketing. So through Vepple, they can sign up for an account, and when they do, they can consent to different marketing channels. They're more than twice as likely to consent to be email marketed to. Excuse me, I should say I've got a cough, so apologies if I start coughing. They're also nearly 4 times as likely to click to chat to staff and students using our integrations with UniBuddy or the Ambassador platform. So next up, I'm just going to touch on content, and specifically this is relating to what topics of content prospective students are interested in. So, excuse me, we ran a research study back in September 2020 where we asked prospective students, what would you like to see? What are you interested in the kind of ultimate online open day experience? When that came back, we kind of very much fed that into the designs of Vepple and sort of considered that all ages. But now that we've got the data, we thought it would be interesting to see what people are actually interested in. So what this pie chart shows is not where people are spending their time, because ultimately that has a skew of, what the universities that are using the platform at the minute, what content they've added. This is specifically from the kind of main menu, from the navigation. What is the intent of people? Where are they wanting information? So what are they clicking on within the menu because they want to know more about X? It might be that actually they get there and there's not much content because the uni's not populated it yet, but this is the intent of where they're wanting to go and where they're wanting to get information. And what we've seen really backed up the research actually that we did a couple of years ago now, saying that the top of the pops was information about the subject, course, studying, teaching, that kind of thing. So those kind of academic pages and that content really key. And to be honest, a lot of universities are doing a good job of showcasing that facilities. Sometimes pretty text heavy, and some more interactivity wouldn't go amiss, and we'll come on to that in a bit. But actually, course pages are often pretty good. Really not that far behind though, accommodation and campus/explore. They're really important topics for people, and we'll come on to the impact of people viewing those sections later on. But it's really interesting to see actually how from subject, accommodation and campus, you've got nearly 3/4 of the kind of vote in terms of what people are wanting to know about. Student life comes after that, and we'll come on to student life in a little bit more detail, but I think particularly subject and accommodation are things that are often done reasonably well on university websites. They're not necessarily joined up so that you can move between the two that easily, but the content is often there. But with student life in particular, I think there's a real opportunity to do a better job there, and make sure that people aren't heading back to Google to learn more about a city or a place, the surrounding area. Keeping them on the virtual experience, on the content hub, is a real opportunity, I think, and something that, as you'll see later on, can pay dividends in terms of then conversion. Just two things to mention from here versus the research that we did originally. So one is that employability ranked quite highly on the original survey. It's not featured on here, not because people aren't interested in it, but because it's not really something that any of the partners that are using Vepple at the minute have pages on. So I think there's definitely an opportunity there, and obviously we'll feed that back into the community that we have to make sure that they're aware of that and they're kind of benefiting from those learnings. But I think that's an opportunity. Likewise, the kind of more procedural stuff. So, you know, going through the application process, fees and finance, some of those more functional topics actually can be really interesting. And again, with the personalization thing, if you are targeting parents, for example, they're really important topics. So definitely want to watch as well. But yeah, that's what we've seen from the data they're clicking on at the minute. So just moving through to the impact of them visiting those sections. What this isn't saying is that there is a set order that they go through in their journey. I think there is potentially a set order that they go through in their journey, and I think we need to drill into that a little bit more, and we will do, and we'll feed that back to the community, the kind of findings of that. But what this essentially shows you is that if someone within a session visits a campus page or a subject page or an accommodation page or a student life page, this is on average what their sessions look like. So for people who at some point in their session visit either an explore or campus page, on average, their session duration is around the 10-minute mark. On average, they view about 11 pages per session, and on average, their conversion rate to one of those calls to action that in Vepple are at the top right, you know, book an open day, etc., is about 6%. Pretty similar story, to be honest, for subjects or course pages, you know, course information, around the sort of 10, 11 minute mark, 11 pages per session again, 6.8% conversion rate. Accommodation, you start to see a bit more of an increase. So heading up towards 13 minutes, pages per session jump up quite significantly. And I think that may well be because often accommodation has more visual content, you know, 360s images. And so you're moving through a few more pages as you're interacting with that instead of it being more kind of written stuff. Still, the conversion rate stays around the same kind of space. The interesting one for me was when you look at student life. So if student life features within a session, average session duration is nearly 20 minutes. And you see the number of pages per session has also skyrocketed to nearly 27 pages within a session. Crucially, so is the conversion rate. So it's nearly double. Well, it is double, almost 13%. So that's not to say that the absolutely most important thing is to get people straight to student life, because there's a good chance that they're not going to convert at 13%. But you can see how there is an importance for actually making sure that people can see everything, and if you can hold them within the journey, and we'll touch on this a little bit more in a second, that it would appear as though they do engage more and ultimately they convert more as well. So I think there's a real there's more work that we can do here to really kind of drill down into this, but you can see how I think it would be reasonable to assume that for the first 12 or so minutes there's a good chance that they are viewing this kind of these three top things, you know, the campus, subject and accommodation. And when we run focus groups with prospective students and students, which is something that we now do to kind of feedback into the platform, that kind of plays through. That's the kind of stuff that they were saying is the stuff that they're most interested in. But then student life after that, and I think if we can see anything from this, is that actually if people do stick around and look right the way through to student life, at that point they're really quite engaged and tend to be much more likely to convert. So next up, interactivity. This is obviously, for those of you that will know RV, this has kind of been our bread and butter to some extent, making that kind of interactive content, be that video, 360s, vlogs, all those kind of much more interactive solutions. But what we're actually seeing is that it works. So I just wanted to touch on that and give you some examples. So this, and I should say first, if you recognize this content, it's not a criticism of your work here. I just wanted to highlight how there's potentially an alternative way to present information that versus what's currently being done. So this is ripped directly from an accommodation website from a university. And this page, this was basically the page. There wasn't really any other imagery on there. It was pretty kind of copy-based. And it goes into really great detail about lots of stuff. And I'm sure, the admissions teams and inquiry teams do get queries about, do I need to bring a dustpan and brush to uni? Do I need to bring a kettle to uni, or does it come with the room? I totally get it. You do need that information there. But I would question whether there might be an alternative way that you could present this information to just make it a little bit more engaging and to help people see themselves living at there. And I think that's ultimately one of the ambitions, is to try and get people to picture themselves there. And, it's the same as buying a house, whatever. You want people to start thinking, oh yeah, I could put my sofa there and I could do this. The more you can help them sort of break that journey down, the better. So compare this with, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to just switch across to a video, which I'll do now. Compare that to this, where actually you can have a look around the spaces. So this is extracted directly from Vepple here, and you can see, I'm not going to explain what 360 does, you all know that, I'm sure, but you can actually look around the space. So you can click on the content spot here to interact with the information in there, to say, I need to learn a little bit more about this facility. I'm going to read about it. I'm going to have a look at some of the image galleries. So you can imagine how, when you were reading through that information, to be like, yeah, it comes with a chair, it comes with a lamp. There's an optional bedding pack that you can buy for international students, so that they can click on that. You can kind of contextualize it in the sense of what you're looking at, instead of just presenting it all in a written form on a page. So now we're moving through into the bathroom rather, and you can see how we've just got quick navigation between each of these spaces. So we can now have a look around the kitchen. We can see that there's a kettle. We can see that there's an ironing board. And if you really wanted to go to town on it, you could add a content spot in, as we've got here, for a mop, so that you can say, it really comes with all of this stuff and you get in the absolute detail. So the impact of doing that and showing that interactive content, if I just hop back to here. So what we've done, again, is analyze sessions where we interacted with interactive content, and then conversely where there was no interaction with that kind of content. So on the left here, you can see without interaction, 3.36% for 360. So if someone didn't interact with a panorama within a session, they had a conversion rate on one of those main CTAs, book an open day, etc., of 3.36%. If they did interact with a 360, that jumped up to nearly 7%, 6.8%. So 101% change in that conversion rate. Image galleries did have an impact. It wasn't quite as strong. So 4.6% without interaction, 5.4% with interaction. So again, there is an increase there. And then video, almost as good as 360s. Without interaction of the video, conversion rate was 4%, and with interaction, 7.8%, so 93% positive change. So you can see from this that one way or another, people who are interacting with that content and with those kind of more interactive types of content are much more likely to convert, almost double in some instances. So last up, user experience. And this is, I've kind of touched on this a few times here, but this is the idea of the fact that we've personalized content to make sure that what's relevant to someone is apparent to them. We've made sure that we've got content for the right topics, and then the actual content that we're delivering, it's the stuff people want in terms of, it's interactive, it's videos, it's 360s, etc. User experience comes in to actually say, okay, well, that's great, but if you have what I think a lot of university websites have, where, and I think, Katie, this was mentioned in the kind of chat to start with, the idea of streamlining it to make sure that you can move from one thing to the next much more easily, instead of it being kind of siloed off in different sections. The way that this kind of is tied together is key. So just back to this slide for a second, just to touch on a couple of things. So just as a reminder and a refresher, university websites on average have 3 pages within a session. Vepple has over 10. I just wanted to call that out because what I've done here, this is data from an actual university website, so nothing to do with our platform whatsoever. You guys could do this analysis yourselves on your own website if you wanted to. What I've done is mapped the number of page views within a session, and that runs across the bottom. And then up the side here is average session duration, and that is the purple line that you can see here. So as you would imagine, it makes total sense. As the number of page views within a session goes up, so does the average session duration, which you don't need a graph to tell you that that would happen. What you possibly do need a graph to tell you, though, and what was quite surprising to me, was the correlation between that and the conversion rates. Because often what's kind of told is, don't worry too much about these figures in isolation. Average session duration, just because someone spends ages on the site doesn't mean that they're getting a positive experience. And that's totally true. Someone might be having a look around, being like, oh my God, this is the worst experience I've ever had. I'm looking for one bit of information. I can't find it anywhere. I'm getting really frustrated. I'm just going to leave. And they might spend 20 minutes looking for a piece of information, get really frustrated, hate your brand and leave. In isolation, these stats on their own, page views per session, average session duration, they don't necessarily mean that that's a positive experience. What I wanted to do was try and actually say, well, what would a positive experience be like? And the best kind of metric I could think of for that was actually the conversion rate on those CTAs again. So this is mapping the conversion rate of CTAs against those indicators. So, against average session duration and the number of page views. And what you can see actually is the more someone interacts with a site, both in terms of average session duration and in terms of page views, the more likely they are to convert. The challenge is that for university websites, because on average you're only getting 3 pages within a session, and an average session duration would be 3 minutes, they're only getting to this part of the conversion rate, because actually they're at that point potentially bouncing back off to Google or going somewhere else. Whereas if you can keep them on your site, and again, this is nothing to do with Vepple here, this is just a university website. If you can move this green line to the right and get people more engaged and make that journey more seamless so that they can move between content buckets without bouncing off or going to the homepage and having to search again and things, the more you can reduce friction between moving through sections, the more likely you are to see this green line move to the right hand side. And what we're seeing so far is that actually that means that you're much more likely to have someone convert as well. Just for reference, we're seeing exactly the same thing on Vepple. So this is from all of the Vepples that we've got live over the last 3 months. And this is page views per session down the bottom, average session duration in purple, and the conversion rate in pink. And the main difference here, the trend is almost exactly the same in terms of the correlation between the two. The difference here is that obviously for Vepple, while we are keeping people on site a lot longer, the conversion rate is much higher because naturally they're spending longer on the site, and this correlation exists. So just really interesting. I've heard it said a few times before, modern browsing habits mean that actually it's not a problem. You don't have to keep people on there forever. It's okay for them. Their internet is Google, and they start there and they search for something and they find a website, they get some information, they go back to Google, and eventually they'll keep coming back and then go, oh yeah, that website's really helpful. And that definitely is true, but also you can see here, actually, if you can keep people and make sure you contain that journey and give them everything in one place, there's a really great opportunity to be had there to actually provide everything that they need and just make it totally seamless. So without further ado, I'm going to hop across to Vepple. I'm not going to show you this for very long because we don't have time, unfortunately. It goes without saying, if anyone wants me to kind of walk you through this at your leisure, very happy to have a chat with you and get a demo booked in, or just something a little bit more informal. Quite happy to answer questions on this as well. But what I wanted to do was just showcase to you kind of how Vepple works, very high level feature overview. So first up, you can see the optional lead gen module here. So this is essentially a way of us capturing information on the people that are using the platform. You can turn this on or off depending on whether you want to do this. But for anyone that signs up, And there's various different incentives for them to sign up. But for anyone that signs up, you're going to get data on everything that they then do within the platform. So every topic of interest that they're interested in will be stored. Every call to action that they click on, every event they've attended, every 360 they interact with, every video they watch, you'll have a log of all of that. You'll even just have like an overall engagement score of how engaged they are with the platform. And all of that data can be then synced, exported and synced with your CRM so that you can then potentially retarget people or just understand them a little bit more as you take them through the funnel. For now, though, I'm going to continue as a guest. And this is the filtering that I mentioned, the personalization tool. So at the start here, we've got the ability to personalize the experience. So in this case, I'm going to say I'm interested in undergraduate study. I want to study art and design, and I'm from the UK. I could say that I'm not sure, and I just want to receive a generic experience here, but as we've seen from the data, if you do, you're far more likely to get people then clicking through to the calls to action, and also they're much more likely to spend less time on site. So now that I'm through to here, everything that I'm seeing is totally personalized to me. So if I go through to your subject page, you're going to see here that all of the content within here specifically relates to an art and design student. The talk that we can see is an undergraduate talk. The 360 that's visible here is about the art spaces. The content that's served up within this grid is all about the spaces relating to art and design as well. So we can have a look around these facilities, fully WCAG compliant, so that you can view this no matter what device you're using, or if you need assistive tech to help you explore. But you can see how everything within this page has been personalized based on my preferences. If I was to change my preferences and said I'm actually interested in postgraduate chemistry and I'm an international student, when I come through to your subject, the content relates to chemistry. You can see we've got a whole new section here for studying in the UK appeared that wasn't there before for an undergraduate UK student. And you can see how just everything has been tailored and personalized based on those preferences. The calls to action in the top actually have just changed here as well. So we've now got visitors and apply now for postgrads. It could be that we have one set of calls to action for chemistry students and another for art students. It could be that undergraduates have one set and postgraduates have another. It could even be that undergraduate art students have one and postgraduate chemistry students have another. You can hyper personalize to make sure that you're always pushing people to exactly where you want them to go next. We can deliver guided tours. So if I go through back to the welcome and click through to this day in the life guided tour, you can see how in this instance, this is a day in the life guided tour. So this actual student is taking you on their kind of day in the life. So we're starting in the accommodation. We can actually click on their face in the corner here. Sorry, you can't see that because the thing's in the wrong place. Just move over there. So you can see down here, we've got this chappy. We can actually click on and interact with him to hear what he has to say about this space. So this is about the closest thing we think you can get to to virtually recreating that sort of physical experience of being taken on a tour. So you've got the ability to bring in student voice, all that authentic content. You can position content spots, which I'll touch on in a second within here. But yeah, ultimately it's about creating more of a narrative around facilities instead of just being like, here's loads of stuff, go explore yourself. You can actually handhold people a little bit more. You can group content together. So if I go through to say accommodation and I go into like this Myrtle Hall group, we're going to start outside here. I can have a look around at the 360 outside. We can head into the bedroom and it's within here. As you can see, we can interact with say this image gallery to learn more about the accommodation. We can have a look down here at a video, and all of this is populated through a content management system that it comes with. So you've got complete control over the look and feel, but also the site structure and the content that goes into it. You can explore everything by map. When we did the research, 100% of prospective students said that centre space in place was really important. I think bringing everything together visually on a map so that you can actually explore geographically what's relevant to you is key. We've got an events section, so if you did want to run online events, you can schedule events to either be starting at a particular time or available on demand. And if you were to try and view one of these events without signing up, you'd be prompted to sign up so that, again, you can capture that lead information on people that are browsing around. You can do that as well by actually restricting any content. So if I try and access this employability section, I've locked that off actually so that you have to sign up to do that. So there's ways of kind of incentivizing lead generation as we go through. Chat to Our Students is an integration with both the Ambassador platform and UniBuddy, where those experiences are brought directly into Vepple without you having to leave. Not got much time to go through anything more than that. So as I say, if you would like to know more or kind of have a demo at any point, please do just get in touch and we can get something arranged. But I'll just hop back to the deck for now. So there's a few technical things that I may not have mentioned, so just briefly, it's fully responsive to accommodate all screen sizes. We host it for you, including the content management system that it comes with. You can deep link into any part of the site, and we've got a various a sort of suite of embeds that you can use to integrate Vepple into your website as well. So you can push people to specific parts of Vepple with filters pre-applied even, so that they don't have to go right back to the start every time. They can start exactly where you want them. It's accessible from your website or a subdomain. It has support for WCAG 2.1 to AA compliance, GDPR compliance, and then one of the big changes for us is that as a business, we're no longer doing the bespoke virtual tools. So this is, in our view, the kind of future of content hubs for future students. And we, as part of that, my whole team's focus is now dedicated to making this better. So all the time we're pushing updates to release new features, look at the data and learn from it. And also, running focus groups and speaking to prospective students to understand what it is that they actually want and getting that feedback. And all of that gets fed back to the community so that they're aware and they're kind of abreast of the latest trends and changes, but also so that we can make the platform better as well. All of that is reported on through a performance dashboard that you guys have access to. But again, the beauty of everyone being on the same platform is that we can actually benchmark, so you can see how you're performing in relation to other universities using the platform. And then we can make recommendations to you on what you might like to change, or what you're doing well, where you could potentially improve based on that data in quarterly sessions that we'll run with you, where we kind of agree objectives and aims that you're trying to achieve, and then we'll report back to you on how we're doing with that as time goes through. There's 3 packages: silver, gold, platinum. They're sold on a 1, 2, or 3 year contract. Prices shown below for 3 years, and there's different features. Obviously, if you want more detail on that, it's probably worth a conversation. And just to mention, I know it's a biggie at the minute. We're still in a position where we could get something running for clearing if you wanted to. We've had clients go from the end of onboarding through to live in as little as 5 weeks. Others take a bit longer. It really depends on what you're wanting to achieve, but it is possible. So that's Vepple, but just as a kind of recap, really, those take-home actions that I wanted to touch on, hopefully you found that interesting and helpful. The 4 things for me that really to take away: making it easy for your audience. You don't have to have a fancy filtering system to put everything that a prospective student's likely to need in one place. It obviously helps, but I would say that. But in doing so, you'll be greatly increasing the chance of capturing them as a lead, engaging them in content, and ultimately converting them to visit or apply to your uni. Don't lose sight of the importance of being able to navigate between topics of interest. So I touched on what they were, but I think just generally having a think about, when someone comes to your site and, ask them. I mean, there's nothing better than actually getting people to sit down and say, what would you do here? Can you walk me through the process? But don't underestimate the value of having everything in one place and really reducing the barriers between moving between topics of interest. Interactive content is essential to retain the interest of a prospective student. So 360s do a particularly good job of that. We thought 360s may have had their day, but they time and time again test really, really well with prospective students for getting a feel of what it's like to be there. Likewise, video content, particularly kind of authentic video content, so vlogs, student-generated stuff, and again, anything that you can do to make it more personalized so that it's more relevant to them, the better. But all of that interactive content is great. And then lastly, just as you've hopefully seen from today and found helpful, having data to kind of learn from and lean on, and refining things as you go is critical. So I'm imagining many, if not all of you, have access to Google Analytics and data on how your site's working. You can learn a lot from that without too much work. So it's really, I'd encourage you to have a look at that. And again, combine it with the kind of more qualitative focus group testing and surveys and things like that to get a sense of what people think. Without further ado, I'll hand back across to Tom.
Jonny, thank you very much for that. Hopefully those attendees found that nice and insightful. Guys, it's question time. Does anyone have any questions? Katie, does that give you a few ideas as to how to maybe make the experience more streamlined? But do you want to expand a little on your view of streamlining? Are there any other points or ideas you could add to that? And that's for Katie or anyone else for that matter. Okay, I'll just start off then by asking Jonny, how do Vepple compare to university websites if we're looking at users having not personalised their experience?
So yeah, at the start of the experience, they can choose to personalise or not. About 60% of people do personalise their experience. So the majority are personalising, which is great. And that's great because, as I mentioned, you're going to see more than double average session duration. So for people who do personalise their experience, for people who don't personalise their experience, their average session duration is usually around the 5-minute mark. And for those that do, it's upwards of 10 minutes. So you really want to try and get people to personalise. But yeah, for those that don't, it's still up on university websites, which are more like 3.5 minutes. But I think that's probably in part due to the fact that, as well as the personalisation, you've also got the interactive content and other things. So that probably pushes it up.
Cheers, Jonny. Just looking over the student life section, so we saw some really high levels of engagement, and then that sort of filtering through to high levels of click-through and conversion of students, or prospective students. Is there anything any tips you can give regarding the actual content within those student life sections? Is there any specific? I know you did touch on a few things, but I just wondered whether there are any specific things with the student life section that you saw as been particularly engaging for the users.
I think video plays a big part of student life, or it can do. But I would also say there's a lot of stuff out there that isn't necessarily curated by the university, but is still really valuable. And you can kind of act as an aggregator by actually leaning on other things that are already in existence, and bringing them all together into one place, so that again they're not having to go away. But yeah, really it's that same interactive content. So video often does a good job of showing student life, and I think that's where really vlogs can really come in as well, to kind of showcase what it is like to actually be a student living on campus, and what where they go out into the city or into the local area, and what hobbies are and things like that. Though it's all about getting that student voice across. So I think I'd definitely say that's a good shout.
Thanks, Jonny. And I guess onto the more practical subjects, when it comes to Vepple, we've had numerous clients feeding back that one of the big issues for those guys, for the university, is resource and time and resource to actually move over to Vepple. They might have existing content, but that they need to either move that content over to Vepple. They need some help integrating. That's been an issue, and it might be worth just mentioning how we've been able to help, or how we can help clients with
that. Absolutely. And this is something that I think we realized a little bit later on, that actually, there's, we've made the platform intentionally easy to use so that people can populate it themselves. And for everyone that's live at the minute, they've done that. You know, they've in-house populated it, but we've started to offer what we call a kickstart service, where essentially it would probably be me would work with you to actually migrate existing content across, look at the content structure of the site and say, you know, you might want to consider doing this, this, and this, and we get to a point where I would work with your team, or someone with my team would work with your team, really as an extension of your team in partnership to pull together an experience to get something off the ground quite quickly, you know, within a matter of days even, and really kind of train you how to use the platform so that then the baton can be passed on, but you're not having to do all the heavy lifting yourselves. And we're starting to see that really kind of helping just to get something live quite quickly. Yeah.
And we've had clients commenting on the power of the content management system. In fact, you gave me a tour just the other week, Jonny, and you were explaining when it comes to, say, 360s, for example, how the clients are able to position hotspots and information spots themselves. And I think that was feedback that we've had over the 50 bespoke virtual experience we've created over the years. Was sometimes a bit of frustration when the clients kept having to come back to our dev team to actually make changes, whereas I think a big push behind Vepple for us has been enabling the client to really take control. And whilst we're still here to offer support, I think the clients are already enjoying the fact that they can do a lot of this stuff themselves. Have you got anything to add to that point, John?
And just like you say, really, I think it's kind of just an evolution of the product where actually we've found out what works and where we can add value. And I think one of the reasons why interactive content often doesn't get added into university websites and things like that is because it's quite difficult to do. You know, grouping 360s into a guided tour with ambassadors narrating what you're looking at and making that work, but then also making it accessible and everything, it's quite hard, you know, on mobile phones and on desktop devices, you know, and everything in between. It's pretty tricky, and you can't often retrofit it into some experience. So from the ground up, obviously based on our experience and working with unis over a number of years now, we've kind of gone, right, what is the easiest and best way of doing this? And you know, the filtering capability is extremely powerful, but we've tried to make it as simple as possible so that you can you know, you can tailor exactly who sees what, and kind of do that in the most simple and streamlined way.
Thanks, Jonny. It's probably time for me to draw this webinar to a close. The final thing I'll say is, if you'd like some more information, if you'd like us to take you through a more detailed demo in which we can delve into a bit more of the data, we can then share some benchmarking information across the various different, we can't reveal the specific client data, but we can give you that benchmarking aggregated data, which clients find really interesting. We'll give you more of that. So book a demo with us if you'd like to see a little bit more and experience more of Vepple. Send Jonny or I a personal email. I can see that there's a number of friends on there, including the guys from Dundee. Hello, guys. Do feel free to contact us personally, or send an email to hello@revolutionview, and it'll find its way to either Jonny or myself. And I think that's about it. Any final comments, Jonny?
No, just thanks everyone for your time. Appreciate it, and hope to speak to you soon.
Yeah, I'll reiterate the same. Thank you very much, guys. Thanks for joining us. Take care. Bye.
Cheers. Bye.